The gym was alive with energy, the rhythmic clanging of weights hitting the floor, the low hum of treadmills, and the occasional grunt of a lifter pushing their limits. In the corner of the gym, Kevin stood, commanding attention as always. Towering and chiseled, he was everything an MMA fighter was expected to be. He had power, speed, and most of all, confidence, or arrogance as some might say. Kevin leaned against a bench, smirking as he watched the new arrivals struggle their way through a warm-up class. A few members glanced his way nervously, avoiding direct eye contact. He had a reputation not just for his skills in the cage but for his sharp tongue and an unforgiving sense of superiority. Then she walked in. Sarah? She hesitated by the entrance, clutching her water bottle tightly, her eyes scanning the bustling room like she didn't belong. Her chest tightened at the sight of the machines, the mirrors reflecting bodies far fitter than hers. But she had promised herself she'd come. Her friend Kayla's voice echoed in her head, "Just take it one day at a time. You deserve this." Sarah wiped her clammy hands on her gym leggings and headed to the mat area. Kevin spotted her immediately. She wasn't the typical gym-goer he was used to seeing. Sarah was visibly overweight, her bright pink workout top clinging a little too snugly to her frame. She knelt awkwardly on the mat, avoiding glances. Kevin chuckled softly. "Look at that," he said to no one in particular, loud enough for his friend Max, another lifter, to hear. Max glanced over briefly but said nothing. He knew better than to engage with Kevin's mocking commentary. Sarah began her workout. Following instructions on her phone, she dropped to her knees to attempt a push-up. Her arms trembled, struggling to lower her body halfway. She grimaced as sweat immediately began to form on her brow. Kevin couldn't resist. "Is she trying to do a push-up, or is she fighting gravity itself?" He snickered, drawing a small laugh from a group of bystanders nearby. Sarah's face turned red. She wasn't sure if it was from the effort or the humiliation. Her heart pounded in her ears, drowning out the sounds of the gym. "Keep going, just keep going," she thought. But tears burned behind her eyes. This wasn't the first time someone had underestimated her. She had dealt with sideways looks at restaurants, judgmental whispers from coworkers, even passive-aggressive comments from distant family members. But something about Kevin's taunting voice hurt on a deeper level. Kevin, noticing Sarah's hesitation and flushed face, only found it funnier. "Don't worry," he called out, loud enough for the room to hear. "It's the effort that counts, kind of." More snickers followed. Some gym-goers ignored the interaction, too wrapped up in their routines to care, but others exchanged glances. A few even looked uncomfortable. Sarah clenched her fists, blinking back tears. "Don't let them see you break," she muttered under her breath. She managed one shaky push-up before collapsing onto her knees again. The humiliation stung, but beneath it, a flicker of determination burned brighter. Across the room, the head trainer, Marcus, had been observing the scene quietly. Marcus, a no-nonsense former athlete with a soft spot for underdogs, saw something in Sarah, the way she grit her teeth and got back into position despite Kevin's mockery. He walked over. "Hey," Marcus said warmly, offering a hand as Sarah struggled to stand. "I'm Marcus. You're doing good work here." Sarah glanced at him, unsure how to respond. "Thanks, but I think we both know I look ridiculous." "Ridiculous?" "Nah," Marcus replied, his tone firm. "You showed up. You're trying. That's more than half the people out there on those fancy machines." He gestured toward the gym floor, where others were scrolling through their phones mid-workout. Sarah couldn't help but smile faintly. Marcus's words felt genuine. "I don't know if I'm cut out for this," she said, almost whispering. "Listen," Marcus said, crouching slightly so they were at eye level. "Nobody's born an athlete. We all start somewhere. What matters is where you want to go from here. So, where do you want to go, Sarah?" The way he said her name caught her off guard. She paused, feeling a lump in her throat. "I want to get stronger," she admitted. "I want to feel better about myself." Marcus nodded approvingly. "That's a great place to start. Now, let's make a plan." Kevin watched from across the room, rolling his eyes at the sight of Marcus giving Sarah one-on-one attention. "Looks like we've got ourselves a motivational movie," he muttered sarcastically. But Sarah wasn't focused on Kevin anymore. For the first time that day, she felt seen, not as an object of pity or ridicule, but as someone capable of more. Marcus worked with Sarah for a few minutes, adjusting her posture and showing her modified exercises she could manage. By the end of the session, Sarah was panting, her muscles sore, but her spirit was lighter. "See you tomorrow?" Marcus asked with a grin. Sarah hesitated but nodded. "Tomorrow." As Sarah packed up and left the gym, Kevin's voice rang out one last time. "See you on the floor again. Don't hurt yourself." She didn't look back. Her mind was racing, replaying every cruel word, every glance of disdain. It all became fuel for a fire she didn't even realize she had. On her walk home, Sarah thought about all the times in her life she'd given up because people told her she couldn't do something. This time, it was going to be different. She wasn't just doing this for herself, but for every person who had ever felt invisible. By the time she reached her apartment, her exhaustion had been replaced by a simmering determination. The path ahead was uncertain, and she knew it would be filled with pain and setbacks. But for the first time, Sarah felt a small but unshakable belief that maybe, just maybe, she was capable of more than she'd ever been told. The next morning, Sarah woke up sore in places she hadn't even known existed. Her arms felt like lead, her thighs screamed with every step, and her shoulders ached even when she reached for her coffee mug. For a brief moment, she considered skipping the gym. The thought of Kevin's laughter and cruel words still hung in her mind, like an unwelcome shadow. But then Marcus's words echoed in her memory. "You showed up. That's more than half the battle." She took a deep breath, threw on her workout clothes, and headed back to the gym. The gym was just as intimidating as it had been the day before. The usual faces were there: Kevin, his friend Max, and the tight-knit group of regulars who thrived on the energy of the weights and machines. Kevin was mid-conversation, laughing loudly as he demonstrated a striking combination. When Sarah walked in, his eyes locked on her almost immediately. "Well, look who's back," he said mockingly, loud enough to ensure everyone in earshot would hear. "Round two, huh? I'll give you that." Sarah didn't respond. She avoided his gaze, heading straight for the treadmill. "Just keep moving. Don't let him get under your skin," she thought. She climbed onto the treadmill and began walking at a slow but steady pace, the hum of the belt beneath her feet grounding her in the moment. To her surprise, Marcus appeared a few minutes later, clipboard in hand. "Hey, Sarah," he said, his voice as upbeat as the day before. "You ready to step it up today?" She glanced at him nervously. "I don't know. I'm still sore from yesterday." "That's how you know it's working," Marcus said with a grin. "Let's just focus on building consistency for now. Slow progress is still progress." Over the next hour, Marcus guided Sarah through a series of low-impact exercises designed to improve her mobility and build a baseline level of strength. While Kevin and his crowd continued their heavy lifts and loud antics on the other side of the gym, Sarah focused on her form, breathing, and movement. But as the days turned into weeks, Sarah noticed something shifting, not just in her body but in her mind. The gym, which had once felt like enemy territory, began to feel a little less hostile. Marcus made it a point to check in on her progress daily, offering encouragement and small adjustments that made a world of difference. And while Kevin's jeers hadn't completely stopped, Sarah found herself caring a little less with each passing day. She settled into a routine, one that required early mornings and sacrifices. There were days she wanted to give up, days when her muscles felt too tired and her mind too overwhelmed by the enormity of her goal. But every time she thought about quitting, she remembered the fire that had been lit within her, the fire to prove to herself, and to anyone who doubted her, that she was capable of more. One evening, weeks into her new routine, Marcus approached Sarah after her workout. "I've been thinking," he began, rubbing the back of his neck. "You've been really consistent, and I can see you're pushing yourself. I think it's time to add a little challenge to your routine." "What kind of challenge?" Sarah asked, unsure if she was ready. "Well, there's a beginner's strength training class that I run on Thursdays. I think it could be a good next step for you. What do you say?" The thought of joining a class, of working out in front of other people, was terrifying. But Sarah knew she couldn't let fear hold her back forever. "I'll do it," she said, surprising even herself. Thursday evening arrived quickly, and Sarah stood outside the gym, her heart pounding as she stared at the doors. The idea of walking into a class filled with strangers was daunting enough, but the knowledge that Kevin was likely to be there made it almost unbearable. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The class was small, just a handful of participants spread out across the room. Marcus greeted her warmly, introducing her to the group and helping her set up her station. Sarah felt the familiar pang of self-doubt as she noticed the ease with which others moved through the exercises. But she reminded herself that this wasn't about comparison, it was about her own journey. As the class progressed, Sarah found herself surprising even herself. She wasn't as strong or as fast as some of the others, but she kept up. And by the time the hour was over, she felt a surge of pride that made every ache and every drop of sweat worth it. But not everyone shared her enthusiasm. Kevin, who had been lingering near the back of the class, watched her progress with his trademark smirk. "Didn't think you'd make it through," he said as the class dispersed. "Guess there's a first time for everything?" Sarah met his gaze for the first time in weeks. "And yet, here I am," she said simply, her voice steady. For the first time, Kevin seemed taken aback, if only for a moment. But he quickly recovered, waving her off with a dismissive laugh. What Kevin didn't realize, though, was that Sarah's quiet confidence was only growing. The weeks of consistent effort, the guidance from Marcus, and the small victories along the way had transformed her in more ways than one. She wasn't just physically stronger, she was mentally tougher too. The transformation wasn't dramatic or immediate, but it was undeniable. Each day, Sarah pushed herself a little harder, lifting heavier weights, running longer distances, and learning to silence the doubts that had once held her back. And while Kevin continued to mock her from afar, Sarah stopped letting his words define her. The months that followed were grueling yet rewarding. Sarah had become a regular fixture at the gym. She pushed through early mornings and late evenings, her determination unwavering. Her progress was slow but noticeable. Her endurance increased, her strength improved, and she began to move with a confidence she hadn't felt in years. Marcus continued to be her biggest supporter, tailoring her workouts to match her growing abilities and offering words of encouragement when she needed them most. Other gymgoers, too, began to take notice of her transformation. What had once been whispers or giggles behind her back had turned into nods of respect and casual greetings. Even Kevin's mocking remarks had lessened, although his arrogance remained as strong as ever. One day, as Sarah was finishing her session, Marcus approached her with an unexpected proposal. "Sarah, I've been thinking about how far you've come. You've built such a strong foundation, and your consistency is inspiring. There's a community fitness challenge coming up in 3 months. It's a mix of strength, endurance, and agility activities. Nothing extreme, but it's definitely a step up. I think you should consider signing up." Sarah's initial reaction was disbelief. "Me? Compete? I'm not even close to that level, Marcus." He smiled reassuringly. "You'd be surprised at what you can achieve when you push yourself. This isn't about winning or losing. It's about setting a goal and proving to yourself just how capable you are. Besides, I'll be there to guide you every step of the way." The idea scared her. Competing in a fitness challenge meant stepping far outside her comfort zone, exposing herself to judgment and scrutiny. But it also presented an opportunity, a chance to show herself and everyone else just how far she'd come. After some hesitation, she agreed. Training for the challenge was unlike anything Sarah had experienced before. Her workouts became more intense, requiring greater focus and effort. Marcus introduced new exercises that tested her limits: burpees, deadlifts, kettlebell swings, and high-intensity interval training. The first few sessions left her completely drained, but she refused to give up. During this time, Kevin became an unavoidable presence. He had also signed up for the fitness challenge and made it a point to remind everyone of his prowess. "It's going to be a cakewalk," he bragged loudly to his friends one evening as Sarah completed her sprints nearby. "The competition doesn't stand a chance." Although Sarah tried to ignore him, his words stung. But instead of letting his arrogance demoralize her, she channeled it into motivation. Every mocking comment and dismissive smirk became fuel for her determination. As the challenge date approached, Sarah noticed changes that extended beyond her physical strength. Her mindset had shifted. She no longer entered the gym feeling out of place or insecure. Instead, she walked in with purpose, her head held high. She had learned to focus on her journey rather than the opinions of others, and it was liberating. The day of the fitness challenge arrived, bringing a mixture of excitement and nerves. The gym buzzed with energy as participants gathered, warming up and preparing for the day's events. Sarah spotted Kevin across the room, surrounded by his usual crowd of admirers. He caught her eye and flashed a condescending smile. "Didn't think you'd actually show up," he called out. "This should be entertaining." Sarah ignored him, focusing on Marcus's words of advice. "Remember, this isn't about him or anyone else. It's about you and the progress you've made. Stick to what we've trained for, and you'll do great." The first event was a timed obstacle course, designed to test agility and endurance. Sarah approached the starting line, her heart pounding. As the whistle blew, she launched herself forward, navigating the tires, hurdles, and rope climbs with a mixture of determination and precision. It wasn't easy. There were moments when she faltered, moments when her doubts crept in. But she pushed through, crossing the finish line amidst cheers from the crowd. Kevin, of course, completed the course with ease, making sure to flex for the cameras as he crossed the line. But Sarah didn't dwell on his performance. She was too busy catching her breath and preparing for the next event, a deadlift competition. As she approached the barbell, she felt the weight of the moment. Not just the physical weight of the bar, but the mental weight of everything she had endured to get here. The room seemed to quiet as she gripped the bar, her hands steady despite the sweat. She lifted with all her strength, her muscles straining as she reached the top. The applause that followed was loud and genuine, a testament to her effort and growth. Kevin, of course, took the opportunity to outlift her, his smug grin on full display as he added more plates to the bar. But for the first time, Sarah didn't care. She wasn't competing against him. She was competing against the version of herself who had once believed she could never do this. Event after event, Sarah gave it her all. The final event was a grueling relay race, combining sprints, weighted carries, and a final run to the finish. As she approached the last stretch, her legs felt like jelly, and her lungs burned with exhaustion. But the sight of Marcus cheering her on and the crowd's supportive energy propelled her forward. When she crossed the finish line, she collapsed onto the mat, a mixture of relief and pride washing over her. She hadn't won. Kevin had claimed that title as expected. But to Sarah, it didn't matter. She had faced her fears, challenged herself, and proven that she was far more capable than she had ever believed. As the day wound down, participants gathered for the awards ceremony. Kevin strutted onto the podium to collect his trophy, basking in the applause. But something unexpected happened as he walked back to his group of friends. He glanced at Sarah, who was chatting with Marcus and some other competitors, and for the first time, he seemed to falter. He didn't say anything, but his expression betrayed a flicker of something, perhaps respect, perhaps acknowledgement. It was subtle, but it was enough for Sarah to know that she had made an impact. In the following days, the events of the fitness challenge became the talk of the gym. While Kevin continued to flaunt his victory, something had shifted in the dynamic. More and more, people approached Sarah with words of encouragement and admiration. "You were incredible out there," one woman said, stopping her during a break between sets. "Seeing you push through everything was so inspiring." Another added, "You didn't let anyone intimidate you, not even Kevin. That takes guts." Sarah thanked them, humbled by the support she was now receiving. While she was proud of her performance, what meant the most to her was knowing that she had inspired others to rethink their own limits. Kevin's behavior also began to change. While he hadn't openly apologized for his earlier treatment of Sarah, he was notably quieter around her. His sarcastic remarks and smug comments were conspicuously absent. Perhaps it was a result of seeing the respect she had earned from others, or perhaps it was the simple realization that she wasn't the same person he had once mocked. Still, Sarah didn't dwell on Kevin. Her journey had taught her to focus on the things that mattered: her growth, her goals, and her self-belief. The fitness challenge had been a milestone, but it was far from the end of her story. One afternoon, as Sarah was finishing a set of squats, Marcus approached her with a grin. "I've got some news for you," he said. A friend of mine who runs a wellness retreat was in the audience at the challenge. She was really impressed with your journey and asked if you'd be interested in speaking at one of her events. She thinks your story could inspire a lot of people. The idea took Sarah by surprise. Public speaking was well outside her comfort zone, but so was stepping into a gym for the first time, and look where that had led her. After giving it some thought, she agreed. The event was held in a cozy conference hall filled with people eager to hear stories of transformation and resilience. When it was Sarah's turn to take the stage, she felt a familiar nervousness. But as she began to speak, sharing her journey from self-doubt to self-belief, she found her voice. She talked about the fear she had felt walking into the gym that first day, the humiliation of being mocked, and the moments when she wanted to quit. But she also spoke about the strength she had discovered within herself, the joy of pushing past limits, and the incredible support she had received along the way. By the time she finished, the room erupted in applause. People came up to her afterward to thank her for sharing her story, some even tearfully recounting their own struggles and how her journey had given them hope. That night, Sarah reflected on how far she had come, not just physically but emotionally and mentally. The gym had started as a place of dread, filled with people who doubted her. Now it was a second home, where she had built a version of herself she could be proud of. One evening, weeks later, Sarah was doing pull-ups, a feat that had once seemed impossible to her, when she noticed Kevin standing nearby. He seemed hesitant, as if he wanted to say something. Finally, he approached. "Hey," he began awkwardly. "I just wanted to say, you were impressive at the challenge. I mean, really impressive. I didn't think someone could." He stopped himself, realizing how his words might sound. "You've worked hard. It shows?" Sarah was taken aback. It wasn't an apology, but it was as close to one as she would likely get from someone like Kevin. She smiled and simply replied, "Thanks." In the months that followed, Sarah continued to push herself, setting new goals and reaching new milestones. She started running her own group training sessions, helping others who, like her, were just beginning their fitness journeys. She shared her story openly, using her experience to guide and motivate others. One of her clients was a woman named Laura, who hesitated on her first day at the gym in much the same way Sarah had. "I don't think I belong here," Laura had said, wringing her hands nervously. Sarah had smiled and replied, "I used to feel the same way. Trust me, you belong here more than you think. Let's take it one step at a time." With each client she trained, Sarah felt her purpose grow clearer. Her journey was no longer just about herself. It was about paying forward the lessons she had learned and the strength she had gained. The gym that had once been the setting of her humiliation had become the backdrop of her triumph. And while Kevin still strutted through its doors with his trademark confidence, Sarah no longer saw him as an adversary. Instead, she saw him for what he was, a fleeting obstacle in a much bigger journey, her own. As Sarah reflected on everything she had accomplished, she realized that her transformation wasn't about proving Kevin wrong or silencing the doubters. It was about proving something to herself, that strength wasn't about lifting the heaviest weights or running the fastest times. It was about perseverance, courage, and the willingness to start, no matter how intimidating the road ahead might seem. Weeks turned into months, and Sarah's transformation extended beyond just the physical. The gym, which had initially been a symbol of ridicule and discomfort, was now her canvas for achievement. The once intimidating weights became tools for her self-expression, and the same mirrors that had magnified her insecurities now reflected her resilience and growth. Sarah's progress wasn't linear. There were still days of doubt, moments where her mind wavered under the pressure of her own expectations. But every stumble was met with determination. On her darker days, she recalled that very first challenge, a reminder of her resilience. No matter how tough the workout or how loud her inner critic became, Sarah knew she had conquered worse. Meanwhile, the gym community had fully embraced her. She had built genuine friendships with other regulars, forming a supportive circle that went beyond the walls of the facility. They celebrated her milestones, encouraged her on tough days, and most importantly, shared in her victories. One Friday evening, the gym organized a member showcase, a community event celebrating everyone's individual journeys. Participants could volunteer to share their stories, lead demonstrations, or simply cheer others on. To Sarah's surprise, Marcus asked her to be one of the speakers. "Your story embodies what this event is all about," he told her. "You've shown everyone that perseverance and heart are more important than how much you can lift." At first, Sarah hesitated. Speaking at the wellness retreat had been nerve-wracking enough. The thought of sharing her journey at her own gym, where it had all begun, was daunting. But this event wasn't about her alone. It was a chance to inspire others, to give back to the community that had supported her. When the night arrived, the gym was transformed with festive decorations, banners highlighting personal achievements, and an electrifying energy. Sarah sat quietly, observing the event unfold, until it was her turn to speak. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. Standing on stage, Sarah gazed out at the audience. There were familiar faces, friends, training partners, even Kevin, who stood with arms crossed in the back of the room. But this time, Sarah wasn't nervous. She had found strength in her journey and in the understanding that it could ignite something similar in others. 3 years ago, she began, her voice steady, "I stepped into this gym for the first time. I was scared, out of shape, and didn't think I belonged. I still remember the voices in my head telling me to leave before I could fail." She paused, scanning the audience. "And I remember someone making me feel like I didn't belong here, like I wasn't worthy of taking up space in this gym." Kevin shifted uncomfortably, and a ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Sarah continued without missing a beat. "That moment hurt," she admitted, "but it also lit a fire in me. It taught me something important. My journey didn't need anyone else's validation. It just needed me, my determination, my belief, and my willingness to keep going, no matter what." She went on to recount the milestones of her transformation, weaving humor into her story as she described the early mishaps with equipment and the countless times she had wanted to quit. Her honesty resonated with the audience, many of whom saw themselves in her struggles. "But the most important part of this journey," Sarah concluded, "wasn't how much weight I lost or how much strength I gained. It was learning that I was capable of so much more than I ever imagined. And if I can do it, so can you." The room erupted in applause. Sarah smiled, overwhelmed by the response. This time, she wasn't just proving something to herself, she was helping others believe in their potential, just as Marcus and others had done for her. After the event, attendees approached her to share their own stories and thank her for her inspiration. Among them was Kevin. He approached cautiously, a rare humility replacing his usual bravado. "Look, Sarah," he began, his tone uncharacteristically sincere. "I know I gave you a hard time when you first got here. I didn't think you'd stick it out. Heck, I didn't think you'd want to after the way I acted. But you've proven me and a lot of others dead wrong." Sarah looked at him, studying his expression. There was no sarcasm, no hidden agenda, just an acknowledgement of her strength. "Thank you," she said simply. Kevin nodded, seemingly at a loss for words. And while Sarah didn't need his validation, it felt like a quiet closing of a chapter, a moment of closure she hadn't anticipated. The weeks that followed brought new challenges and new milestones. Sarah began training for a half marathon, something she once thought was only for real athletes. Each run felt like another step in redefining what she believed she was capable of. Her role at the gym also continued to grow. She became a mentor to newcomers, a voice of encouragement for those just starting their journeys. More and more people gravitated toward her, inspired by the genuine care and patience she showed. One morning, as she watched Laura, the client she had taken under her wing, complete her first unassisted pull-up, Sarah felt a surge of pride. Not just for Laura, but for the ripple effect her story had created. Every person she inspired was a testament to the power of resilience and determination. Sarah's journey had come full circle. The woman who once hid in the corner of the gym, afraid of judgment, now stood at the center of a thriving community, lifting others as she had been lifted herself. Her transformation wasn't just about her. It was about the people who now walked through the gym doors with their own doubts and insecurities, knowing they belonged. And Sarah, with her strength, determination, and unwavering belief, stood as a beacon of what was possible. This brought Sarah to a realization. Life wasn't about reaching a single destination. It was about embracing the journey, no matter how messy or daunting it seemed, and finding joy in every step forward. And so, she kept moving forward, running toward new goals, lifting heavier weights, and inspiring anyone who crossed her path to believe that they, too, were stronger than they knew. Months after the gym showcase, Sarah found herself reflecting deeply on her journey. She had come so far, from the woman who dreaded even walking into a gym to someone celebrated as an emblem of perseverance. Yet, as much as her transformation had been about physical and mental strength, she realized there was something missing. She wanted to take what she had learned and use it to create meaningful change for others. Inspired by the impact Marcus had on her and the support she'd received from the gym community, Sarah decided to pursue her certification as a fitness trainer. The idea of becoming a trainer had seemed outlandish in the past, something only reserved for the elite. But now, as she helped people like Laura, she felt an undeniable calling to formalize her ability to mentor and guide others. Balancing her existing job and her gym routine with her certification program was far from easy. Late nights of studying anatomy textbooks and early mornings preparing for exams tested her time management and endurance. But each challenge felt worthwhile, driven by her goal to empower others who, like her, needed someone to believe in them before they could believe in themselves. One weekend, Sarah attended a conference for fitness professionals as part of her coursework. The keynote speaker was a well-known advocate for fitness inclusivity, a woman who had shattered the stereotypes around body image and fitness. As the speaker told her story, Sarah couldn't help but relate to the struggles and breakthroughs that had defined her own journey. At the networking session that followed, Sarah mustered the courage to approach the speaker. "Your speech really resonated with me," Sarah began. "I've had a similar journey, and now I want to help others who feel excluded or intimidated in these spaces." The woman smiled warmly, impressed by Sarah's passion. Fitness should never feel exclusive or out of reach. We need more trainers like you, people who understand that it's not just about muscles or aesthetics, but about helping people unlock their potential. If you're ever interested, my organization runs workshops to teach fitness professionals how to foster inclusivity in their work. Sarah felt something ignite within her. This wasn't just about becoming a trainer anymore. It was about creating an environment where anyone, regardless of size, age, or ability, felt welcome. She jotted down the details and promised herself she'd attend the next workshop. Back at the gym, word of Sarah's training certification spread. Marcus, ever the proud mentor, started teasing her about taking over his role. "So, future coach Sarah," he joked one afternoon during their session, "what's your plan? Start running this place with me, or go out and start your own fitness empire?" Sarah laughed but didn't dismiss the idea. Truth be told, the gym felt like her second home now. And while Marcus might have said it in jest, the possibility lingered in her mind. Could she take everything she'd learned and create a space even bigger, even more inclusive? Over time, she noticed more people gravitating to her than ever before. Whether it was beginners trying to navigate the gym equipment or individuals who felt too intimidated to join group classes, they seemed drawn to her openness and relatability. Before long, Sarah realized she was already informally mentoring more than a handful of members, and loving every second of it. One day, Marcus pulled her aside. "I'm proud of you, you know," he said. "You've gone from doubting yourself to someone everyone here looks up to. I don't think I say it enough, but you inspire me too." His words meant more than Sarah could express. But Marcus wasn't finished. "Listen, there's something I've been thinking about. I've been running this place for over a decade and I love it, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to pass the torch someday. You've got what it takes to take this gym and make it better than I ever could. Whenever you're ready, let me know." The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. Could she really take on the responsibility of leading a gym? Could she bring her vision of inclusivity to life in a bigger way? She wasn't sure yet, but Marcus's faith in her planted a seed. As the months went on, Sarah completed her certification and began teaching a few trial classes at the gym. She focused on low-pressure, judgment-free workouts designed for beginners, blending her own experiences with the formal training she had received. Attendance skyrocketed, with people often telling her, "This is the first class I've ever felt comfortable in." Her classes quickly gained a reputation beyond the gym, attracting individuals from other parts of the city who wanted a space where they wouldn't feel judged. Seeing how much impact her classes had, Sarah realized the demand for spaces like hers went beyond the walls of Marcus's gym. One evening, during a conversation with Laura, who was now flourishing in her fitness journey, Sarah revealed her idea. What if there was a gym entirely designed for people who feel like they don't belong in typical gyms? Sarah said, a place where they're celebrated for showing up, no matter where they're starting? Laura's eyes lit up. You mean a place like the one you created for me? She asked. I think it's a brilliant idea, Sarah. If anyone can do it, it's you. Sarah couldn't shake the idea. With every story she heard of someone overcoming fear to show up to her classes, her conviction grew stronger. It wasn't just about fitness, it was about building a supportive community. The leap of opening her own gym wasn't easy. Sarah spent months planning, budgeting, and meeting with potential investors. Marcus, true to his word, supported her every step of the way. You're not just opening a gym, he told her. You're starting a movement. Remember that? After a year of preparation, Sarah opened the doors to her own gym, Resilience Fitness. True to its name, it was a space built on the principles of strength, support, and inclusivity. The walls were lined with inspiring quotes from everyday people rather than unattainable ideals. The equipment was user-friendly and accessible, with plenty of modifications for different fitness levels. Classes ranged from beginner-friendly yoga to community boot camps. Opening day was packed with familiar faces and newcomers alike. Marcus was the first to cut the ribbon, a proud smile on his face. Laura, now a certified trainer herself, hugged Sarah tightly and promised to help make Resilience Fitness a place they could both be proud of. As Sarah walked into her gym that day, she was overwhelmed with emotion. The woman who had once been mocked for daring to step foot into a fitness space was now leading one. Every step of the journey, every setback, every victory, it had all led her to this. Resilience Fitness became more than just a gym, it was a community. Members celebrated each other's victories, from completing their first full workout to achieving long-term goals. Sarah's story resonated deeply with everyone who joined, reminding them that no challenge was insurmountable. Kevin, surprisingly, was among the gym's first members. His arrogance had long since faded, replaced by a desire to better himself and help others do the same. Though he rarely brought up their first encounter, there were moments of quiet acknowledgement between him and Sarah, a shared understanding of how far they both had come. As time went on, Sarah expanded her vision. She launched online programs to reach people who couldn't attend in person, filmed motivational videos, and even started writing a book about her journey. Resilience Fitness grew to include multiple locations, each one preserving the sense of belonging that Sarah had worked so hard to create. Sarah never stopped challenging herself, whether it was running her first marathon or learning new techniques to better serve her members. Yet through it all, she remained humble, always crediting the people who believed in her when she didn't believe in herself. Looking back, Sarah could hardly recognize the woman who had once been so paralyzed by doubt. She had stepped into a gym as an act of defiance and walked out with a purpose to remind the world that strength wasn't just physical but mental, emotional, and communal. Standing in her gym years later, watching a new member timidly step inside for the first time, Sarah saw a little of herself in them. With a warm smile, she walked over and introduced herself, ready to help someone else start their own journey. Because at the end of the day, Sarah's transformation wasn't about how much she had changed. It was about the lives she'd touched along the way. Over the years, Sarah's life became a testament to resilience and the unyielding power of belief. Resilience Fitness didn't just thrive, it became a cultural phenomenon, breaking the mold of traditional gym spaces that had so often alienated people. Social media platforms were abuzz with testimonials from members sharing how their lives had been transformed, not just physically but emotionally and mentally. One of those stories came from Sophia, a single mother of 3 who had been battling her own insecurities for years. Walking into Resilience Fitness had been one of the hardest decisions she'd ever made, but something about Sarah's story struck a chord deep within her. Watching Sarah's welcoming demeanor and down-to-earth classes gave Sophia the courage to keep coming back. 2 years later, Sophia stood on stage at Resilience Fitness's annual celebration event, sharing her own transformation with the crowd. "I never thought I'd find a place where I belonged," Sophia began, her voice shaking with emotion. "I always felt judged, out of place, like I didn't deserve to take up space. But when I came here for the first time in my life, I felt seen. I felt accepted. Sarah, you've created something that gave me not just my confidence back but my life. Thank you." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she listened to Sophia's speech. These were the moments that made all the late nights, struggles, and sacrifices worth it. Meanwhile, Kevin's journey had also taken an interesting turn. Though he had initially joined Resilience Fitness out of remorse and a desire to make amends, his perspective on fitness shifted entirely. He saw the gym not just as a place to train but as a community built on accountability and growth. Inspired by Sarah's leadership and his own reflections, Kevin began volunteering his time as a mentor for young athletes. One day, after a training session, he approached Sarah with an idea. "I want to start a youth program here," Kevin said. "There are so many kids out there who struggle to find their footing, and I feel like I could help them avoid making the mistakes I did. If I'd had someone like you or Marcus guiding me when I was younger, things might have been different." Sarah didn't hesitate. "That's an incredible idea, Kevin. Let's make it happen." The Youth Empowerment Initiative, led by Kevin and supported by the gym's team, launched shortly afterward. The program provided free classes, mentorship, and fitness training for underprivileged teens. It became one of Resilience Fitness's most celebrated ventures, giving young people not just an outlet but a sense of belonging and purpose. Watching Kevin in this new role was surreal for Sarah. She could still remember the cocky fighter who had underestimated her all those years ago. Now, here he was, using his platform to empower others. A stark reminder that transformation wasn't just about redemption but about paying forward the lessons learned. As the years rolled on, Sarah's impact continued to ripple outward. In addition to running multiple gym locations, she became a sought-after speaker, sharing her story at corporate events, schools, and international fitness expos. Her message was simple yet profound. Change starts with showing up. During a TED Talk, which garnered millions of views online, Sarah stood confidently on stage and said, "The hardest step I ever took wasn't lifting my first weight or running my first mile. It was walking through the doors of a gym where I didn't feel like I belonged. But sometimes, the scariest choices we make are the ones that set us free." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the audience. "What I want everyone to understand is that you don't need to look a certain way, be a certain size, or fit into someone else's expectations to start. Strength isn't a destination, it's a journey. And that journey begins the moment you decide you're worth it." Her words resonated deeply, sparking conversations across social media about inclusivity and the importance of accessibility in fitness. People from all walks of life began sharing their own first step stories, creating a global movement under the hashtag #ResilientTogether. Despite her growing fame, Sarah remained grounded. She never forgot where she came from or the people who had supported her along the way. Marcus still worked out at her gym, though he'd semi-retired from full-time coaching. Laura had become one of her most trusted trainers, spearheading community outreach programs and charity events. One particularly poignant moment came during the annual Staff Appreciation Dinner, where Sarah surprised Marcus with a special tribute. "You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself," Sarah said, holding back tears as she handed him a framed photo of the two of them from her first showcase. "You saw potential in me that I couldn't see. None of this, Resilience Fitness, this community, this movement, none of it would exist without you." Marcus, visibly emotional, hugged her tightly. "I didn't do anything special, Sarah. You did the work. I just gave you a nudge." That night, surrounded by the people she loved most, Sarah felt a profound sense of gratitude. Her journey had been far from easy, but it had led her to a place where she could lift others, just as Marcus had lifted her. The following year, Sarah decided to take her mission even further. She partnered with nonprofits to bring fitness programs to underserved communities, providing resources to those who lacked access to traditional gyms. She also collaborated with schools to integrate wellness education into their curriculums, teaching kids the importance of self-care and resilience from an early age. Her advocacy didn't stop there. Sarah worked tirelessly to push for policy changes that would make fitness spaces more inclusive for people with disabilities, older adults, and anyone who felt alienated by the industry's focus on aesthetics over health. Through it all, her mantra remained the same: show up and keep showing up. One day, during a quiet moment at the gym, Sarah sat down with Laura to reflect on how far they'd come. "Did you ever imagine this?" Laura asked, gesturing around the packed gym. "When you started this journey, could you have pictured any of this?" Sarah smiled. "Not in a million years. Back then, all I wanted was to stop feeling invisible. I had no idea that stepping into that gym would change everything, not just for me, but for so many others. It's humbling, honestly." Laura nodded. "You've created something extraordinary, Sarah. But what's next? Do you ever think about the future?" Sarah thought for a moment. "I think about it all the time. And what I keep coming back to is the same thing: helping people realize their worth. Whether it's through new gym locations, online programs, or even just one-on-one conversations, that's my goal. Because at the end of the day, that's what changed my life. Someone reminding me that I mattered." Years later, as Sarah stood on the stage of yet another packed auditorium, she glanced at the crowd before her. She saw faces young and old, people from all walks of life who had been touched by her journey. Taking a deep breath, she began. "When I started my journey, I was mocked, doubted, and underestimated. And for a while, I let those voices define me. But then I found my strength, not in proving them wrong, but in proving to myself that I was capable of so much more than I ever imagined." The audience hung on her every word. "Today, I stand here not as someone who has it all figured out, but as someone who knows the power of persistence, community, and belief. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this: you are stronger than you think, and you are never alone." The room erupted in applause, a sea of smiling faces and tear-filled eyes reminding Sarah why she started this journey in the first place. She had transformed not just herself, but the lives of countless others. And in doing so, she had shown the world what it truly meant to be resilient.